Hello guys, welcome to Cop First. So today we will solve a question which was asked in Deloitte. Before looking into the question, let's see what data we were given. So the question said that you are given an event log table that tracks user activity by date. So if I run this query select star from event logs, then this is the table that we get. So it contains user ID and the event date. So it contains all the users who performed a particular event on a particular date. So this event, this user 101 performed an event on this particular date, which is 1st of January 2024, then on 2nd January, then 3rd January, and then on 5th January, and so on. Similarly, the second user performed an event on this date, and then this date, and so on. So let's see what the question says. The question says, write a SQL query to calculate longest streak of consecutive active days for each user. A streak is defined as a continuous days with no gaps. So in a way, the question is saying that you have to identify the longest consecutive days of each user when the user was performing this activity or performed this event. For example, for 101, if you look at the days of event, then first day, second day, third day, these are the 3 consecutive days on which this user performed this activity. Then he performed on 5th and 6th. So these are again these 2 consecutive days. So if you look at the consecutive days, there are 3 consecutive days and then the 2 consecutive days. Out of this, the longest streak is 3, right? The 2 is smaller than 3. Similarly, if you look at user 2, then this user performed a streak on day 1 or performed this activity on day 1. Then again he logged back in or performed this activity on 3rd, then 4th and 5th. So one of the streak is having count only 1, the other streak is having count 3. So for user 102 also we can say the longest streak is of 3. So the longest, like the consecutive days, are 3. Similarly, for user 103, there is only 1 day of event. So for this user, the longest count of consecutive days will be 1, right? So this is what we have to find. So finally our output should look something like this. 101 should have the streak count as 3. 102 also we found out that it should be 3, or 103 it should be 1. This is what we are looking for. Now how can we do that? So if you look carefully, we have to somehow mark these consecutive days as a group. So these 3 days should be tagged as one group, and then these 2 days should be tagged as another group. And if we are able to tag them in a group, then we can check the count of rows in that particular group, right? For example, if let's say we call this 3 days as group 1, then within this group, if we can perform the count function, then it will say that in this group there are 3 rows. So that will give us the streak as 3. Similarly, for this group it will say 2, and so on. So one of the target here is to group these consecutive days. Also, once we have grouped them, then what we can do is, for each user, within each user group, we can find the maximum of the count of event date. So for 101, for this group we will have 3 as the count, and for this group we will have 2 as the count, and we can choose the maximum out of the 2. And finally we will get this particular answer. So in summary, we have to somehow group the consecutive days for each user, and then figure out the maximum, figure out the count for that particular group. And once we have the count for each group, then at a user level we have to find the maximum of count of event date, right? So let's see how we can achieve this. So for this, what we can do is we can make or we can use the row number function. Let me write the part of the query, and then I'll tell you that how row number function can help us here. So I'll write select from event logs. What do I select? I'll select the user ID. I'll select the event date, and then I'll write the row number function. Row number over, I'll partition this data by user ID, partition by user ID, and I'll order it by event date ascending. So yeah, let me run this query. Okay, let's call this as rn, and now let me run this query. So if you see carefully this row number column, then what it is doing is it is adding row number to each of the user group. So we have used user ID, partition by user ID here. So for user 101, it will have the count 1 to 5, as user 101 has 5 rows. Now one thing to observe here is, if I subtract this particular event date from this row number, consider the row number, imagine the row number as a day. So it says that subtract 1 day from this particular date. So you will reach which date? This is 1st of January. So if you subtract 1, you will reach 12th of December of 2023, right? 31st December of 2023. Now if I come to the second row, then if you subtract 2, then you will reach December 2023 31st again, right? And if I come to row number 3, again you will reach 31st December 2023. And when we come to the next row, then it will subtract 4 days from 5, then we can say that it will reach 2024 1st of January. So if you see carefully these 3 rows, when we subtracted row number from them, then they return the same date, which is 31st of December 2023. Now why that is happening is because these dates are consecutive and row number is also consecutive. The row number is increasing by 1 and the dates are also increasing by 1. So when you subtract both of them, then you will get the constant number. Similarly, within this group, if you see, because these two are consecutive days, 5 and 6. So if you subtract 4 from 5, then you will reach 1st January. And if you subtract 6 from 5, you will reach 1st January. So this will reach 31st of December 2023. This will reach 1st of January 2024. So this constant date, which you will obtain after subtracting this event date and row number, considering row number as a day, this you will receive a constant day, right? Constant date. Now this constant date can be used as an identifier. We can call it as a group. So using this constant date and this user ID, we can say that this is a unique group. Similarly, this date and this user ID will be a unique group, and same thing will happen for other users as well. So let me convert this row number into date and subtract it from this event date, and then see what output we obtain. Then you will better understand what I'm trying to explain here. So what I'll do is I'll just use the date add function here, and I'll say return me day, comma, I'll subtract this row number from event date. Okay, I'll call it as maybe date def. Okay, so what this function will do is it will subtract this row number output, which is this basically, which we obtained like 1 and 2 in this case, from this event date, and it will return me a date. So this is a date add function. Basically it will add this particular value in this event date, and it will do this at a day level. That means it will subtract 1 day. If I would have written like month here, then it would have subtracted 1 month. So it is basically adding this particular value to this particular event date. So now if I run this query, then we will obtain what we were discussing previously. So you can look here, you have this date difference, you have this 31st for 101 for these 3 consecutive days, then you have 1 and 1 for these 2 dates for 101, and if you look at 102 user, then for this particular date you have this 31st date. So this can be one group, and then you have 111, these 3 values same for these 3 dates. So this is another group of 102. Similarly, for 103, you only have one line item or one row. So this combination of this user ID and this date can be called as a group, and if you count the values or count the rows in this particular group, you will get the streak count, right? You will get the number of consecutive days when the event occurred. So I think this much is clear to everyone. So now let's enclose this part of the query in a CT, and let's call it with user group or user event group as this. Okay, now what we have to do is we have to, in each group we have to count the number of consecutive days, right? So what we will do is we will do select from what? Select from user event group, and we will select the user underscore ID, and then we have to count basically what we have to do, count of, we can do count of user underscore ID, and within each group we can do this count. So first we should actually write group by what will be a group based on. A group will be based on this user ID and date diff column. So this date diff column in combination with user ID will form one group. So we will write a user ID, group by user ID, and group by date diff column, right? Let's call it this count as maybe, let's say, streak. Let's call it streak count. Okay, and now yes, let's run this part first, then we will move further. Let me run this. Yeah, so okay, let me order this also. They are separated, order by user ID, because they are appearing far apart. So now you can see this 101 has one group with 3 streaks, one group with 2 streaks, and this 102 has one group with 1 streak and one group with 3 streak, and this 103 has only one group which had only 1 streak. Now what is the next thing that we have to do here? Now we have to calculate the maximum for each user. You have to calculate the maximum of this streak count, right? So again, what we can do is we can enclose this part of the query as well in a CT, and then we can take max of the streak count for each user, and that will be our final answer. So let's call this as maybe what? Streak count. Okay, let's call it a streak count, and then what we will do, we will simply do select from what? Select from streak count. What we have to select? We have to select the user ID, because we have to give our output in this format, right? The format that we showed above, this 101 user ID and then the maximum, just longest streak, right? So what we will do is we will count the user ID, and then we will count what? We will count the streak count, not count. We will do the max of streak count, and within which group we have to do this? We have to group by what? We have to group by user ID. For each user we have to count the maximum of streak count, right? So we'll group by user underscore ID. Now this should be fine. Let's call it as longest streak. Okay, now let me run this entire query now, and then we should have our final answer. Okay, we have done a mistake. This order by should be removed from the CT. You should never put order by in CT. Now let me run this again. Yeah, so now we have our final output. 101 had maximum 3 streaks, 102 had again 3 streaks, 103 had 1 streak. Now let's say you are asked to also show the date, the starting date and the end date for these longest streaks. Then what we will do, or what you will do actually, so write that query in which you have to put 2 more columns. One is the start date and the end date of the streak. and let me know your answer in the comment. Hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.